Hi, everyone. It is the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and kick this off. My name is Chris Conklin. I'm Mitsubishi's Director of Retail Marketing, and we're really thankful that you joined us for today's webinar on e-lead strategies and best practices. We're excited because this is the first month in what is going to become a monthly series of educational webinars offered by our partners over at Unite Digital. Um, be on the lookout for many more field-based, both in-person and virtual training and education programs that are going to be coming starting in February. So, like I said, be on the lookout for more information on those as we're launching them. But with no further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Stephen Justice from Unite Digital. Stephen, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit about e-leads and some strategies and best practices. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We'll start off with the digital car shopper journey. Always like to kind of set the table a little bit of how customers seem to find us and the various ways that they do so. We'll talk about the first personalized response and what I call 5 key elements that should be in every single response. We'll spend a lot of our time in this session talking about those 5 key elements in detail. We'll talk about some of the more modern day communications as it pertains to texting, some phone strategies, and finally, some of the more advanced lead response strategies using video to your advantage. Touch briefly on follow-up processes. Not everyone buys on the first attempt, so we have to follow up. We'll see how it's working and where our areas of opportunity are, and talk about some of those key performance metrics that you should be looking at in your store. And we'll round out our final lap on with what's next. And we have some resource guides to give you to download at your convenience, as well as a checklist to take back to your store right away and see how you're executing on the most effective e-lead strategies you can for your store. So again, we'll start with the digital car shopper journey and sort of where did that lead come from. Now, I'm a numbers guy. I like to use numbers and stats and all to kind of use it as proof statements behind a lot of my recommendations, just the nature of consulting. And the first stat that I will throw out to you guys is 86%. 86% was the last stat that I read that showed the percentage of consumers that start their shopping journey online when it comes to automotive. And I've actually kind of gotten away from that stat because in my mind, and I may perhaps you agree, to me, I think it's everyone now. I think that's more accurate. And I think it's just simple to say everyone starts their buying process online. Now, what's interesting about the online process is, unfortunately, it is not linear. And what I mean by linear, meaning that the customer doesn't always start at the tier 1 site, find the vehicle they want, go down to the tier 3 site, to the dealership of choice, click on that VDP, they fall in love with it, submit their information, and come in the door. No, actually, the digital car shopping journey, as technologically advanced as it is, and as much information is given, it's still a very messy process. And what do I mean by messy? I mean that customers jump in and out of websites, whether it's competing brands, competing dealerships, third-party sites, social media sites. As a matter of fact, they have over 900 plus digital interactions during their shopping journey. I don't mean one-to-one personal interactions with sales associates, but as you can realize, when customers are shopping various brands, when they're shopping various dealerships and multiple vehicles, and then their social media feeds start to change, and then they're watching videos online, and then they're seeing things on connected TV, they are absolutely bombarded with information. Information on price, information on availability, on trade-in values, on incentives, on competitive comparisons. They have it all at their fingertips. But how they ultimately land, meaning where they finally say, here is my name, number, I'm ready to take the next step and start engaging in conversation, can play a lot and give you a lot of information as to what's most important to that customer. So whether they came in through a tier 1 site, a digital retailing tool, a third-party site, or even the dealership website, gives you a looking glass, perhaps, into what's most important to them. In other words, are they price comparing? Are they a payment buyer? Are they even maybe just comparing the brand, and they're just now learning about all the things that Mitsubishi has to offer against competitors? Maybe they're coming in through a trade-in value tool. Those things can really give you an opportunity to fine tune your response to a customer to see what's most impactful to them. Because the digital shopping journey, as I said, is not linear. And unfortunately, we can't build a process around every single way shopping journey that the customer comes through. But what we can do is add 5 key elements to our first personalized response, no matter where they land, that should be standard across all of your responses, regardless of where that lead came from, but offering some flexibility to personalize it to the shopper. I think that you probably learned as of late, everything is about personalization. Think of your own shopping habits and experiences. And so, what are those 5 key elements? Well, first, response quality. And we're going to get into each one of these in detail, but basically, it means you only have one chance to make a first impression. Second, price and availability. And that's about eliminating the most common questions and objections that a customer has of you. Three, brand awareness. All things being equal, why should a customer do business with you? Why should they do business with Mitsubishi? And it's not just about branding the Mitsubishi brand, it's about the brand of the dealership, and even perhaps the brand of yourself as the sales associate. Calls to action. How do we keep customers engaged in our digital ecosystem, meaning our website and our digital advertising, to ensure that we drown out the noise of all the competition and keep them engaged with us? And then finally, next steps. How do we guide that customer down the road of the sale? No matter how many times someone buys a vehicle, which is usually on average every 4 to 5 years, that still feels new to them, and they still want to be guided as to what they need to do next. That helps build trust and transparency. Another thing I want you to keep in mind as we go through this. So, first thing, response quality. And by response quality, I'm not just talking about the timing, which I think we all sort of focus on. How quickly can I get that email out? And we know that customers are more likely to visit a dealership if your first response is within 30 minutes. But I challenge that a little bit. As a matter of fact, Mitsubishi, their standard is at 60 minutes. And the reason that we've done that is because you never want to sacrifice quality over speed. Quality is key. And what I mean by quality, I mean by giving instead of giving a customer a quick response, giving them a response that provides a value to them. And so, what do I mean by value and response quality? Well, the first thing is probably your subject line, right? And crafting and engaging a subject line should be your first step towards improving your automotive lead response. So, your subject line is really the main factor when it comes to your open email rate. And a poorly written subject line can make all the difference between swiping left and deleting and opening up that email. And shoppers are likely requesting information from more than just your store, right? They're getting bombarded with email requests that they put into other dealerships, to other brands, not to mention all of the personal and business emails and promotional emails we get throughout the day. So they get a sea of communications. So if you want to win their attention, you want to ensure that your subject line is detailed, it's personalized, and compelling enough to stand out to the competition. What's more is think about a typical desktop inbox displays about 60 characters of an email subject line. Mobile devices show about 25 to 30 characters. So make sure you keep it within that. But what I will say is with 68% of emails being open on a mobile device, email with a mobile friendly design is no longer a nice to have. It's a must have. And think about what's most important to a customer in an email, right? They're looking probably for the price and availability, which we're going to talk about next. They're looking for any of their questions to be answered. As a matter of fact, 74% of customers will set an appointment when all their questions are answered. What a stat that is not there, 48%. And that's what that stat drops to when their questions go unanswered. So those are the most important things. But also think about, is it easy for them to scroll up and down? Do they have to do a lot of pinching in and zooming out? Are there easy clickable calls to actions to make it easy for them to reach back out to you, to email, to phone, to text? So keep those things in mind. One last stat before we can move further, 1 in 3. And that represents the number of customers, according to Mitsubishi's rejector survey, that chose a different brand due to a lack of transparency or in their interactions with dealership personnel. And that doesn't just mean what they received in store, that's also what they got online. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this and always keep that top of mind awareness. because it really starts with price and availability, right? That is the main thing that customers are looking for. Whether they explicitly ask that question to you or not, every customer, to my knowledge, always wants to know the price before they write a check or sign on the dotted line to purchase a vehicle. And then we learned from the car shopping journey that, they've got over 900 digital interactions. So I promise you, during all those interactions, they've at some point come across a price. They've at some point come across an idea of what the payment is. As a matter of fact, 72% of sessions involve cross shopping. So the old argument of I want to have them come in so I can give them my best price and wow them with the in-store experience, so just get them in. I don't think that argument works any longer. Now customers are looking mainly for a continuity of message, mainly from what they see on tier one, whether it's going onto the tier one site or the commercial they saw on television or the radio ad that they saw. When they come to tier three, is it closely aligned with what they're seeing? Because Mitsubishi does a fantastic job of doing quarterly sales events where they sort of magnify all their top brand, their top vehicles and incentives. So it's about that continuity of message. And whether you provide a price or no price, if you provide no price, you're always considered really the highest price. And think about what the common questions of a customer asks. Whether they ask it explicitly or not, but when they do ask it explicitly, it always centers around one of two things: the price of the vehicle or the availability of the vehicle. And so confirming things like the availability and assuring buyers that they're making the right decision really increases the likelihood that they'll engage in meaningful conversation, convert sooner with you. And this can be achieved in a lot of different ways, ladies and gentlemen. So maybe by sharing flexible payment options with them, highlighting different trim levels. These are all things that really make the customer feel as though you are being of use to them and being helpful to them versus trying to pressure them into a sale. It makes them feel like they are in control. So the key headline here, and to reiterate what we saw back in the rejector survey: transparency always wins. I promise you, transparency every time will win the customer more over than the lowest price or just trying to get them in the door. So consider that. The next thing is brand awareness. So, everyone now sort of providing that upfront price and building that transparency and personalizing it to the customer. So it starts to become, why should I do business with you? What sets you apart if I drive 15 miles east of my home to this store, to dealer A, or if I drive 15 miles west to dealer B? Why should I do business with you? So a lot of things that set a dealership apart or set the brand apart is something as simple as reputation, right? 89% of customers say that dealership's reputation, ratings, and reviews are a top factor on deciding where to buy. But it's not just about the reputation of the brand, which there's a lot to brag about, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's IIHS top safety picks, whether it's top in customer experience and satisfaction, or whether it's touting some of the best warranties in the market. It's also about the brand of your dealership. What are some things that you offer before or after the sale that may make a customer say, hey, I want to do business with dealer A versus dealer B? What are some things that set you apart as the sales associate that may make a customer say, I really find this sales associate engaging. I want to do business with he or she. And Mitsubishi does a lot of competitive comparison studies and research that they provide to you guys as well. So it's important that you understand not only what you offer, but also know what the competition does not offer. Right. So it's always about us versus them, and what can help stand Mitsubishi apart from the competition. So make sure that you and your sales associates are fully aware of those competitive comparisons and how you will use that not only online, but obviously leverage it in store when the customer is test driving the vehicle. The next thing is, calls to action. And so what I would say about calls to action is we spend so much time as an industry talking about the in-store experience and customer experience when they're in the showroom, that we don't spend enough time talking about the experience online. And they're not two different types of experiences. What I mean by that is, for the customer, it's one experience that they see, that they receive online, and how they translate that or predict of how that is going to be when they come into your store. They are looking for one seamless experience. Not every customer is going to respond right away to whatever your email or text or phone message is. Sometimes we have to get them re-engaged back into our website and keep them within our digital ecosystem. So whether that is inviting them into a digital retailing tool to calculate a monthly payment, or guiding them to our trade-in tool so that they get a trade-in evaluation, these are all further small micro steps in getting them further engaged and further committed to the vehicle. 90% of consumers say they prefer a unique car buying journey that allows them to shop and buy in an individualized way. So while we've talked a lot about, sort of these five elements of a personalized response and using that across the board, remember I said we want to make sure that parts of our communication is personalized to the customer. And how do we find out how to personalize it to them? Well, by asking the right questions and answering theirs, but by reviewing their questions and reviewing where they came from online can help tell us a lot, hopefully, of how to personalize that journey for them. So always make sure that you are personalizing it in a way that not only helps them move along the buying process, but that personalization is translating into what they experience when they're offline and come into your showroom. Now, not every customer responds to email. If you're like me, text is always the way to go. As a matter of fact, when you think about texting, think about in your own personal life. So whether you are texting to a friend, to a family member, to a business colleague, whatever the case may be, why do we text? Because it's quick, because it's easy, because it gives us information in the moment. And here's the other thing I will say about text, ladies and gentlemen, is we get hundreds of emails a day between our personal and business and all the junk emails that we get. We get all kinds of phone calls from friends, family, spam, and otherwise. And it's so easy to swipe left and delete email. It's so easy to send a phone call, always and maybe read it later or listen to it later, maybe just hit swipe left and end the call. But here's the thing, we all seem to always read our text messages. And in automotive, it's amazing. As a matter of fact, 98% is the open rate via texting. And texting has a response rate of 45% versus emails of 60%. And what's even more better, 90% of customers open a text within 3 minutes, right? And so texting is a very powerful way to give that fifth pillar of a personalized response, and that's next steps. I don't recommend using texting for that first personalized response. It's probably too much information to give in a text message. You'll start to lose the customer. The first personalized response, I believe in using email to give them all that information up front and transparently. But text is that great way to catch someone in the moment to say, hey, did you receive my email? Here's what will come next. Now, before we get into some other use cases of texting, I want to make sure and put this disclaimer out there. You obviously have to follow all TCPA, local, state, federal guidelines for text, right? And always implement it through your CRM. I think that's been well documented. I think everyone knows that. That's just good business sense. But when you're texting, think about what the value is of the text. I ask a quick question, you give me a quick response, right? That's why you see people texting at red lights. Shame on them. Why you see people texting at the dinner table when they're in a meeting, right? Because it's quick and easy. So make sure that your responses are giving them the once the customer is opted in, is giving them the value of that quick in the immediate answer. And don't be afraid to engage with multimedia using elements like photo and video to showcase Mitsubishi's premium features. We're going to talk about video a little bit in a moment, but texting is a great way to share photos and all to, again, begin to build that emotional attachment of the customer to the vehicle, and give them those quick links to be able to do things like schedule appointments or calculate their monthly payment. Eventually, as much as customers want to do business online, the reality is right now anyway, people still buy cars from people, and eventually they're going to want to speak to you over the phone. And so when you're connecting on the phone, just remember, answering their questions and earning their trust are the things that really build a good, solid customer experience. And so a phone call can't just be, hey, did you receive my email? How can I help you? It really needs to be and you really need to be prepared to converse on prior communications that you sent. So reviewing everything that you sent and the customer has sent back to you, and sort of deconstructing that lead. So thinking about where the consumer is in the buying process by the source of the lead can maybe help guide you on formulating the right questions to ask them once you get on the phone with them. Because make no mistake, conversational control is when you are asking the questions and the customer is giving you the answers, but your questions are structured in such a way that it's leading them down the road of the sale. So think about the things that you offered or committed to giving to them via email. If you committed to giving them a trade-in value, or if they asked for a price, you should be prepared to give those things to them when you're speaking to them on the phone and provide them and being able to answer all of their questions. The last thing I would say is obviously not every phone call will result in an appointment to get into the store, although we would love it to. But every phone call should end with some sort of an appointment. And if it's not an appointment to come in for a test drive, it should at the very least be an appointment to call back at a certain day or time to follow up on the conversation that you just had. So always consider that as your last action before hanging up the phone. And listen, not every phone call will result in a connection, right? As a matter of fact, only 13% of calls connect with the customer. 65 calls result in a voicemail. But I don't want you to take voicemails for granted. It's actually a really important part of the process. So when you're leaving a voicemail, I want you to consider the acronym SHARP. And what do I mean by SHARP? Well, keeping your voicemail short, no more than 30 seconds or less. I mean, some humor into it, right? Bring some humor to make the customer smile. A smile can definitely be heard. Tone can definitely be felt. Articulate. The majority of your customers will read your email. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. Make sure it's relevant, either to the, and by relevant, it's relevant to the customer that you're mentioning that you are, who you are as the dealer and the vehicle of interest, so they don't think it's spam. And be persistent. Keep trying. Only a small percentage of sales are made after the first attempt, just two, in fact, and 30% are made after the fifth. And the reason I put so much importance on voicemail, and specifically being articulate, is if you agree that text messaging is an important communication method with customers in the automotive world right now, then you would agree with me that most customers probably read their voicemails the same way they do text. So articulation is important, and voicemail is no longer a check the box, I did it, mark it in my CRM. You need to be strategic about every point of communication that you have. And finally, video, my favorite subject. We could probably do an entire session on this, and perhaps we will in the future. But video is one of those advanced ways to really get the customer engaged. In fact, video is a great tool that puts your customer in that virtual's driver's seat. Buying a vehicle is a financial decision, but make no mistake, it's also an emotional decision. So when you give your customer the ability to see the vehicle inside and out and get them excited, it leaves them wanting more, and they begin to take that mental ownership. And by building an emotional attachment to not only the vehicle, but your dealership and yourself. In fact, 75% of shoppers say that video has influenced their shopping habits or purchases. And another compelling reason, video boosts email open rates by nearly 20%. And I will tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, a proper video strategy is a lot easier than you think. And it can be achieved by just using your mobile device and camera. We're not filming the next Top Gun here, so no worries there. And these don't have to be professionally produced videos. But remember, keeping it simple and human provides that extra level to the customer experience. And it really kind of enhances the trust of the customer by providing increased transparency on what they can expect and who they can expect when they visit you at the store. And there's a lot of great ways to incorporate video into your dealership strategy. So whether it's improving your first quality lead response by confirming the price and availability with a vehicle walk around, maybe it's setting appointment reminders and showing the customer you have the vehicle ready for them to drive, or offering trainings and demonstrations on things like EV charging, handoff from sales to service, service. But here's a couple of best practices, which I don't have listed here, that I want you to really think about as you start to incorporate a video lead response strategy. Just some easy things to remember. One, video in the subject line. When you include the word video in the subject line, your open rate increases by 19%, and your click-through rate, get ready for this, guys, by 65%. And your subject line can be something as simple as your 2024 Outlander video at Anytown Mitsubishi. Next thing, add some personalization. A personalized message is more likely to catch your audience's attention. I mean, personalization, that's the entire premise behind video lead responses. So be sure to include the customer's name and vehicle of interest in there. Continuity of message is important. So whatever you are saying in video, make sure it aligns with the messages you've already sent via email or what you've already left in voicemail. Finally, calls to action. We've talked about this before, ladies and gents. At the end of the video, have a strong and clear call to action. That way, the viewer will know what to do next. But most important things to remember is one, keep it short. Your video should be no more than 30 to 45 seconds, and ditch the script. And what I mean by that is reading the script kind of makes your message sound robotic. Outlines are always best, and power through the mistakes, because imperfections reiterate the fact that you're human. I've made plenty of them in this webinar, so give me that grace if you would. But it allows you to reveal your authentic personality. But the most important rule to follow, guys, is simply this: show the vehicle, the car is the star, show yourself, and show your dealership. Now, we would love if all of those great things that we're doing of sending these personalized responses, incorporating all these elements, following up with the customer via text immediately after, maybe sending them this great 30 to 45-second video is impactful. And we've left these detailed voicemail messages, but sometimes that's simply not enough for a customer. We have to follow up with them, right? And so a follow-up, when you're building up a follow-up process, one thing I want you to consider: make sure that it is standardized. A follow-up process map should always assume a non-responsive customer. So because they're non-responsive, what we can affect is how we as a dealership, what is our playbook? What is our standard operating procedure? How do we follow up with customers? So a process is standardized when it's consistent and repeatable, when it's conducted in the same manner, regardless of the day or the individual driving the process, that we have it described, but we have some level of flexibility based on the customer communication, because once the customer responds back to us, the process map sort of goes out the window and it takes on a life of its own based off the interaction you had with that customer. The other thing that I would say is make sure there's a measurement in place, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment, to gauge the success of your follow-up process. Now, I've given an example here of a 15-day follow-up process. Quick disclaimer, I'm not suggesting that that is your end-all be-all of a follow-up process. A proper process map should extend to 60 to 90 days at least. But it's in those first 15 days where a customer at least typically decides where and what they're going to purchase. So your communication is key during that time. And not only is it that it's repeatable and consistent, but when I talk about flexibility, that you are not only changing up the method to which you are following up, be it email, phone, text, or email with a video, but you're also changing up the messaging. Because what resonates with a customer on day, or what doesn't resonate with them on day one, a different message on day two may resonate with them. You never know what someone's buying motivation is. So changing things up, like talking about from price and availability, to talking about alternative trims, to talking about certified pre-owned, to talking about what your service department offers, to talking about reputation, the list goes on and on. The good thing is you can take the time with your sales staff to map this out appropriately, plug it into your CRM, and then let technology do the work to remind you what to send and when to send it. But make sure that, one, it's repeatable, and two, that it's consistent, but most importantly, that it has some flexibility to change up not only the method to which you are sending, but the content that's contained there within. Now, how do you know if your process is working, right? This is for everything that we do in automotive, we measure everything. We are fanatics about analytics and metrics in the automotive industry. Well, it's pretty simple when it comes to lead responses and lead management. I like to use what's called sort of a 4 by 60 rule, and that's out of all of your leads, 60% of those leads should result in a contact made. That means a one-to-one communication between you as a sales associate and the customer, whether that's via phone or whether that's via email. You sent out a communication, he or she responded back. 60% of those should result in an appointment. And out of those that result in an appointment, 60% of those should show. And out of those that show, 60% should sell. That is just the easy way to sort of benchmark yourself. And if you look at it, out of 100 leads, that basically means 60 customers showed up, 36 set an appointment, 22 showed, 13 closed. It gave you about a 13% close rate. Easy, right? Well, let's advance it just a little bit further. And let me show you a case study that involves 500 leads. And then these 500 leads where the contact rate, appointment set, appointment showed, and close rate was at 40%, not at 60%. Look what it did to a close rate, which was 2.56%, at an average PVR of 1,300, which gave them a profit of close to $200,000. Now, look what happens when just the metrics of contact rate, appointment showed, and close go to 60%. See how the numbers start to change. Your close rate actually goes from 2.56 to 12.96. Your profit goes from almost $200,000 to just over 1 million, an 800,000 plus dollar improvement. And notice two things I did not change. I did not change the lead count, and I did not change the average PVR. This is meant to amplify why it's so important to manage your processes, to make sure they are consistent and repeatable, because when you do that, it's easier to manage. And when it's easier to manage, it's easier to point out where there's areas of opportunity. And when it's easier to point out of areas of opportunity, that's when we can be more targeted and really refine our process to make sure we are meeting the standards that our customers have come to expect from us. So always consider that measurement. And obviously, the funnel report within the MIDS dashboard is a great way to measure that, but it's always going to be just as good as you are entering into your CRM. So make sure every action that you are taking or the customer is taking is logged within your CRM. That way, you know that you're measuring exactly where your areas of opportunities are. Now, I told you as we round out this final lap, I was going to give you guys a few takeaways. And so here they are. One, a very simple checklist for you to start when you go back to your dealership today to see if you are executing on the 5 elements of a quality first response, if you have a good standardized follow-up process map, and if you are utilizing some of the advanced strategies that we talked about around video lead response or texting. First, easiest thing to do, audit 10 random leads in your CRM. See if you're employing some of those 5 key elements. Make sure that you are auditing them across various sales associates. Look and see if you're treating your digital retailing leads a little bit differently than a standard lead, right? That all goes back to that customer journey. And that's probably one of the easiest ways to determine if you are personalizing responses to the customer. See if your sales associates are asking permission to text follow up and following all those local regulations that we talked about. Listen to the outbound calls. What are your associates doing right? Where's your opportunity to improve? Are they deconstructing that lead before they call? Are they armed and prepared to answer all the customers' questions and give them, things like the price and availability and anything else that they've committed to? And then measure all those, KPIs against the funnel report. Are they aligned? Where are the deficiencies? As you start looking into more advanced features like video lead response, best thing to do, create a contest amongst the sales associates to see who has the best video lead response. It's a fun way to learn. Remember, videos don't have to be long. They don't have to be well produced. They just have to be personal to the customer. They have and quickly executed so that the customer starts to begin that emotional attachment and builds that mental ownership online. But at the end, always make sure that you are measuring and reviewing your processes, both short, mid, and long term, via your CRM. It's the best way to forecast your success. Finally, You will find that in the coming days that you will be able to download resource guides on everything we talked about, from email to phone to video, strategic and tactical recommendations that I have listed there for you as you begin to build a process within your store on how you properly respond to customers. You simply will need to go into MIDS Digital Solutions, enrollments, resources, best practices, and within the best practices, you will see a copy of today's deck as well as some of these resource guides. In the interim, until they're loaded, feel free to reach out to your digital marketing consultant. He or she is the very best at what they do, and they can answer all your questions and really evaluate your current process and help you identify where those areas of opportunity are for improvement. And with that, we have reached the checkered flag, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much for your time today. And I'd like to open it up to any questions that are out there. Just as a reminder, please feel free to utilize the Q&A section of your Teams window and type it in. And while we're waiting for questions, I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Hey, Stephen, while we await Chris, what do you think would be the first thing any of our audience attendees should implement? Like,
Yeah,
if you can go back and do something today, what would be your first recommendation?
The very first one, Mark, great question. We learned from the Redjector survey, 1 out of 3 chose a different brand because lack of transparency. I think it's so easy to close the gap on that by immediately provide a price. Don't overthink it, guys. It doesn't have to be the highest, but make sure you are giving them customers something that they can come back to and ask questions on, that they can that you and that the two of you can speak intelligently on, talking about the price, talking about the availability. The other thing that I would say is a quick win, Mark, is brand awareness. That is the one thing that you can actually sort of template out in an email, right? No, regardless of who the customer is or how they found you, is talking about what are the unique value propositions that set your dealership apart from the competition, and what sets Mitsubishi apart from the competition. But that's the easy part. There's so much there. But what sets your dealership apart, I would say, are the biggest things that you could probably implement today that would make a significant difference.
Hey, Stephen and Mark, my apologies. I'm having all kinds of audio problems. I heard you ask me a question, but I couldn't hear the question or get off of mute.
Yeah, no problem, Chris. So I was just giving the attendees some time to put in any questions they have, and give you an opportunity to close us out in the event
Yeah.
there are no questions. So.
And my apologies again, but yeah, no, if there aren't any other questions, are we good, Mark and Stephen?
Yeah, there are currently no questions right now, Chris. Just a reminder, everyone, we will have things uploaded soon into MIDS, but in the meantime, feel free to
Yeah.
reach out to your digital marketing consultant. But I'll let you close this out, Chris.
That's right. And if you're not sure who that person is, your district manager will be able to point you in the right direction. But thanks again for joining the first of what will be many opportunities to get some proven practices from our friends at Unite. And thanks so much for giving us some time today. And we hope you found this to be extremely beneficial. And thank you, Stephen and Mark.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everyone, for attending.